Baking bread is baking bread. Sourdough preparation. According to the history of bread, true bread started with the development of leaven. It is the foundation of all tasty, airy loaves, and is likely the only obstacle when baking bread from scratch. If you can get enough sourdough for the first loaf, around 125 grams for 1 kilogram of rye flour, the problem is solved, since you can now preserve the same amount of the completed dough each time you bake it, and use it the following time. But you would have to bake on a regular basis, as sourdough only lasts approximately 10 days in the refrigerator. Another alternative is to purchase ready-made sourdough in a bakery. However, most small bakeries today utilize ready-made sourdough, or are part of huge bakeries that only bake the dough produced and provided by the manufacturer. When this happens, it's generally just the country's bakers who still make their own sourdough. They have every reason to be proud of their skill, which requires a tremendous lot of labor and attention, because sourdough manufacturing is a true art form. Sourdough is defined by the baker as a sour fermenting rye flour dough. Lactic acid bacteria and acetic acid bacteria are responsible for acid production. The yeast in the flour produces the carbonic acid. The sourdough prepares the flour for baking and imparts the necessary gently sour flavor. Sourdough manufacture begins with the following steps. To make the sourdough, combine 100 grams flour and 50 grams lukewarm water in a thick paste. That's the minimum amount. The sourdough is sustained and extended over many hours, with additional flour and water, with the proper temperature playing an important role. There are 3 phases of fermentation, based on how fermentation progresses: somewhat acidic, basic acidic, and totally acidic. Just the desired bread dough is made from this. To prevent today's baker from needing to produce sourdough, the industry has long offered so-called ready-to-use acids, which are available in powder form. But they are just as inaccessible as leaven for individuals who desire to create their own bread. You can only get both from the baker, if he is ready to part with some of his assets. You may also make your own sourdough without much trouble. It may sound unusual, but adding yeast and baking powder allows the bread to ferment faster and become looser while retaining the traditional sourdough aroma. Sourdough number 1. Combine 125 grams flour with 63 milliliters tepid water. Then add 1 dash buttermilk, 1 teaspoon minced caraway or chopped onion, and 1 teaspoon brandy or rum. A solid dough should form, and it should be covered with a moist cloth and kept in a warm area for at least 48 hours to ferment properly. It is important to re-wet the towel after a few hours during this time. The time has come when cracks and bubbles form on the surface. The bread dough can now be made. You'll need roughly 25 grams of this sourdough and the equivalent quantity of yeast for 500 grams of flour. Sourdough number 2. Combine 125 milliliters of lukewarm water with enough rye flour, or powdered rye, to produce a creamy porridge. Then store it in a screw-top jar at room temperature, ideally around 30 degrees, for 2 days. Stir the liquid occasionally, but always securely close the jar. The porridge will leaven on the 3rd day. If you add a dash of sour milk or yogurt, it will go faster. When the porridge smells somewhat sour, dilute it with 125 milliliters of lukewarm water again, and combine it with rye flour or crushed rye to make a thick porridge. Leave the sourdough warm in the sealed jar for another night. It'll be ready the next day. Sourdough number 3. In a large mixing bowl, combine 30 grams dried yeast and 1 liter lukewarm water. Next, add 500 grams wheat flour and some sugar to the well-mixed porridge, and keep it in a warm, dark spot for 1 to 2 days. If you make the sourdough with rye flour, you'll need roughly 50 grams of yeast. Good luck with your own homemade sourdough culture. Thanks for watching. If you like my videos, give me a like and subscribe so you don't miss any baking recipes.